Welcome back. We're on to video number 5. Thank you for staying the course with me. By now, if you've internalized everything I've told you about this profound shift from process function to systems and teams, the thought would have come to you by now is, how do I lead this? So I want to talk in the next couple of slides a little bit about the requirements on management, because that's where it all starts. If management understands this and they commit to making this truly fundamental groundswell change in the way the organization functions, it's going to require new skills of management itself. And I must be honest, and I must confess, that the single biggest application successes we've had came from CEOs that were prepared to take enormous risks. They were the ones that said, Ray, we're going to take this company, turn it upside down. We're going to shake it out. We're going to reconfigure it. We're going to put it on the systems and teams platform. And every single one of those individuals turned out to be multimillionaires as a result. All of them made enormous amounts of money from the remarkable improvement in the way the organizations changed their behavior. So I don't know if there's any cause and effect there, but the correlation between managers that are prepared to take the risk, go do this, and reap the benefits of their commitment to this has been very significant. So let me talk a little bit about the 4 boxes, and then I'm going to come back after that, and I'll talk again a little bit about what the new skills and competencies are that management requires in order to make this successful. So throughout our implementations, we've learned that there are 4 facets to implementing the Axion model successfully. And just to remind you again, our goal is to generate an autonomous operation consistently delivering high impact work. Doesn't matter if you're in healthcare or auto manufacturing, finance, or banking, or whatever it is, the goal is consistently the same. We want an organization that's fast, effective, and drives enormous value for its owners. So to get there, here is the first facet. It's systems. Now, clearly that's obvious by now, right? You've listened to me long enough to know that this is a very important part. And we sit down with the organization and we redesign the entire organization as a set of business activity systems, interacting with one another, understanding where the interfaces are, how they will support one another in order to eliminate synchronization problems, eliminate stops and starts and wastes in the interaction between the systems. So we design, deploy business activity systems and the processes within them. Because remember, from my symphony orchestra example, every instrument still has to follow a process. So we're not abandoning process, we're just putting this super important overarching concept in place to make the processes effective. The second one is teams. And here we have to create motivated and engaged teams per system. The last 2 words are the key. These are not teams in and out for themselves and for their own sake. It is the team within the system. I did mention in one of my earlier videos that when we get involved in organizations, we design performance metrics for collective responsibility of the success of the system. And that's crucial. Once highly motivated teams in place, we have to evaluate capability. So sometimes teams within a system construct require different competencies or additional competencies that are not traditionally associated with functions and jobs. And we've defined different roles within a system that the teams and the individuals within those systems have to perform and execute well. And then we have to define and embed competencies and the associated resource capacity. How many resources do I need to run a system? Now, when we work with HR functions, people organizations, this is a really powerful and effective addition to their capability. Because now we have a context within which we can evaluate, assign up to the levels that are required to make the systems run. And then the last one is the leadership piece, which is, I'm sure, you're keenly interested in. And here the point is, how do I concurrently manage both facets, both systems and teams at the same time, in the same construct? How do I do this? Well, let's talk about some of the capabilities. The first one is we have to build dynamic system simulators. This we do to educate people in what the new requirements are going to be from them as individuals. What new behavior do we expect from them? What new measures are we going to be implementing? What new decision models are we going to ask them to support? What new beliefs do we want them to sign up for? And behind that, what new frame of reference are we going to deploy across the organization that's going to get us to the goal? Now, this we've learned over time is incredibly important because you can't just tell people, you have to show them how this is going to work. In order to have motivated, engaged teams per system, there are two things. One is the ability to think about systems. You may think that sounds very trite, but let me assure you, over the years, we've realized that you have to develop and deploy a completely new management language. Because in systems, you're talking about the dynamic behavior, the dynamic interaction between systems. And where functions and processes tend to be static in their definition, systems are dynamic. And we bring into the organization new thinking skills, new ways of understanding how the systems work. So I can explain their dynamic behavior, their cause and effect relationships. Because the desynchronization happens because of the difference in the dynamics of the system. And then this word tribes. Now, this may make you a little uncomfortable, but we've learned over time that in organizations, they very rarely operate according to the function and process. People are social animals. And in the book I wrote and published in 2003, called Great Boss, Dead Boss, I explained what I've seen in many companies is the real way that individuals interact with one another as groups within the organization. And they tend to act as tribes. And in my book, I describe very clearly the tribal requirements that people have in order to identify and feel a sense of belonging within the organization. Then, when I get to capability, this stuff is pretty straight up and down. This is just a capability assessment. The organizations are normally well qualified to do this. But there is this additional layer of the capability of running the systems themselves. And here we assess how much training we need to do, how much support we need to give to get the system team leaders and the teams themselves to interact in a way that's going to make the system successful. And then the one you've been waiting for is the leadership one. And here we have to train the leaders how to manage systems. We present these 5-day leadership workshops. We have people flying in from all over the world to our headquarters in Phoenix, Arizona, to participate in the 5-day leadership program. Because you really do need a different set of skills. You have to manage the systems. You have to manage the tribes. And this has got nothing to do with functional responsibility. We start with the leadership training. How do you manage the organization's transition from function process to systems and teams? So now that you understand these 4 aspects that are involved in us getting this model implemented, I want to talk a little bit about where do you start. It always amuses me when I get to talk to senior executives that the very first thing, and again, this is driven by this function process model, every executive in the company is forever looking at how their political relationships in the organization is going to be affected. Nobody wants to go out there, rush into the CEO's office and says, "Boss, Ray said we've got to do this thing. We've got to go change the company." They know that at the executive level, it's not that easy because there are always your enemies and those that regard any new thing with deep suspicion. And quite rightly so. Companies spend enormous amounts of money on all the flavors of the day, right? You've seen in our first presentations all the loops we've all gone through. But nobody's gone down to the fundamental reason why. And this, in our world, this shift from function process to team systems and teams is the change that you need to make. And whenever I get to talk to companies, the very first time, I can predict a very specific set of events that are going to happen. I'm going to talk to one senior executive with whom this message resonates very strongly. They intuitively sense that this is correct. So now they face a dilemma. Do I go out and promote this and stand on the rooftops and broadcast this message? No, they don't do that. The first thing they do is they find a couple, a very small group, normally 3 or 4 people, that they know they have strong enough relationship and alliances with, that if this thing blows up and others say this sucks, then there's no political damage to them. they know they can get a couple of people together and we can do this, do some trial presentations and do some discussions and then figure out how we take it from there. There's always that first step. Who can I trust to listen to this with me? And then if there's a consensus that, yeah, this thing may actually work, then the next thing I get is a request for us to do an initial training session. Now, you know, anything I put in the training budget, I can hide, right? Because nobody really knows whether training has been effective or not. So if I can put it through the training budget, then I can put 10, 15 people in the room. And I can get Ray or one of the people from Axion to come talk to us. But then psychologically, we're in this buy-sell mode that says we're going to listen to Ray's Dog and Pony show, and then we'll decide at the end of it whether we think there's merit in this idea and whether everybody agrees with it. And then when it goes through that hurdle, and everybody says, yeah, this is really cool, then we always get a request for, well, give us an initial proposal. Tell us what the first is you think we should be doing. And then, in the past, we used to dutifully write out the project proposal and then present it. And then 9 times out of 10, we never hear from the company again. Why? Because then we run into the issue of where do I find the budget? How do I tell my boss about this? The ones that really work well is where they take my videos and they distribute them across the company. So instead of having to go through this painful, am I screwing up my career? Am I putting myself at risk? Am I going to get ridiculed for this initiative? And people do this because they've been hurt so many times in the past. But again, it comes out of this that everybody's got to improve everywhere versus making sure we understand what the systems are, how they interact, where the constraining systems are, how do we focus on changing them. So I want to emphasize here that this is not a read a couple of books and do this exercise. In the large companies, the Fortune 10 companies, we have multi-year engagements. Because we become the coaches, we become the bad conscience, we become the people that drive the execution of this. Because to move us out of this system function thing, which is so deep in the DNA of the company, to move it to systems and teams takes a concerted effort from management, from us, from all the leaders in the organization, and get everybody in the company to know where we're going. So these videos play an incredibly important part in us setting the stage for a very successful transformation. In the last video, I will share with you just the sheer galaxy of companies we've been involved with. Because I must emphasize, this is not an academic exercise. This is not me being a professor at MIT or Harvard or somewhere that's going to write the new best-selling book about how you run companies. This stuff comes out of hard slog, hard grind, sitting in delivery vehicles, going on delivery rounds on the third shift to the middle of the night. This comes from standing on factory floors and watching people work. This comes from sitting in data centers and watching people desperately trying to deal with the pressures of data management. This comes from sitting in, many times, confrontational management meetings, where managers are trying to solve the conflicts between the different interactions of function and process. We've been there, we've seen this. This stuff comes out hard in the trenches of reality. The last video, video 6, I'm going to share with you a real live application, and I'm going to walk you through the roadmap of how to move the organization from function process to systems and teams.